Buddy, Mr. Kohler here. Here to show you how to do a chart or a graph using Google spreadsheets. To do that, you need some data that you've collected. So let's say you've collected some data and you wrote it down. And let's take the rubber band stretch lab as an example. You will always want to probably graph this with an X and Y because that's what our graph has. So to do that, you can think of this column as being X and this column being Y. If you think about what the X is in our sand lab or our rubber band stretch lab, the X is weight that we're going to add. So let's just change that to weight and put the unit there. And the Y is going to be stretch, and so we'll put the unit there, centimeters. Okay, so then let's say for your 5 weights, you chose 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, just nice and easy. And for stretch, you measured that 8 centimeters, 11, 14, 17, and 20. Notice that I didn't put any units in these cells because the spreadsheet, when you make a graph, it doesn't understand numbers and letters together. So if I were to put like 100 and G for grams, it would struggle with graphing that because it thinks it's a word instead of a number. So since we already put the the grams here, the unit there, we don't have to put it in our table. Okay, so once you have all your data entered, and maybe your data is like really, you have a lot of data points and it might go all the way down here, you'll want to highlight all of the data that you want to graph. So to highlight, what I do is I click in, oh, there's my dictionary. I click in here and drag to the end of my data. So there it is. Then I go over here to Insert Chart, that little icon there. If for some reason that icon's not showing up, you can always go to Insert Chart and click on that. And it's going to think it's smarter than you. Google thinks it's smarter than you, which it really isn't yet, if definitely not. So what you want to do is ignore their recommendations most of the time. So I go to chart types right here, and that allows me to choose which chart I want because I'm smarter than the Google. I click on scatter plot, and that allows me to see if there's any sort of pattern amongst the variables X and Y. And I'm going to go ahead and use that, and then I'm going to customize this graph though because it's not quite done. It doesn't have a very good title. It doesn't have labels here. There is no real good grid lines. We don't need this label here, so I'm going to go to customization, and I'm going to change the title. I'm going to say the effect of weight on rubber band stretch, and that's a lot nicer title. It makes more sense. And I use the effect because it's a noun. It's not actually a verb, so we use E for the noun. Scroll down, and now I need to deal with I clicked over here and it changed it to what I had, but I need to put in to label for this axis here, the x-axis, and they call it the horizontal axis, so horizontal going sideways back and forth. So in there I'm going to put weight, and I'm going to put the units, grams, and that's good. Okay. Now I'm going to change the vertical, so the y-axis, the left vertical, and I want to change that. I want to call that stretch of rubber band, and I want to put that in centimeters. And those two show up there nicely, and when I click outside, see this little data point over here? It's kind of out in Nowheresville. I don't like that. It kind of looks like another data point, but it's not. It's the legend. So I'm going to go back up here where it says legend, and I'm going to get rid of the legend. I don't want it. Legend is useful if you have more than one line, but we only have one, or more than one kind of data set, but we only have one data set, so we're going to get rid of it so it's not confusing us. Okay. Now with this, you can see that the scale is it's pretty good, but we could probably do better because we want to use this graph to see if we can see into the future. So I'm going to change this back to horizontal, And let's think about our horizontal. It's up to 600. Our scale can accept 1,000 grams of weight, so I'm just going to go ahead and put 1,000 grams there, and it'll change the scale. And then I'm going to change the left vertical scale. So I have to click on axis and click the left vertical scale. Now I'm dealing with this, and I'm going to make the maximum something like, we're talking centimeters here, so if I do like 40 centimeters, then that would be almost a half a meter. So that looks pretty good. So, but however, there's like a lot of space between 0 and 250, so I kind of have to guess what those two data points are. If I were to overlay them, I know it's 100 and this one's 200, but let's say this is on a piece of paper. Somebody looking at this is not going to be able to hover over a dot and get the data points. So, or the values for the data points. So I would change and add some grid lines here. So that's what this grid line thing is. So we are in the left vertical grid line here. So let's start with that. And I've got 5 major grid lines. Right now it's giving me that. And I'm going to change that to a darker black. And I want some minor grid lines between the major ones. So that means between this line and that line, that's the minor. So how many lines will I need to get to have a line for each centimeter? For like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Well, if I do 10, that's actually going to give me that'll give me 10 lines between this one and that one, and that's actually not good. That's 9. That's going to actually be 11. So I'm going to change this to 9, and if I change that to 9 and press enter, I've got 9 lines here, so I can count up to the 10 with 9 lines. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then I need to change the horizontal as well. And I'm not sure if I like the 250, 500, 750, 100. I'm going to change that. See, I'm going to go to 6 here. Then I've got nice round numbers at 200, 400, 600, 800. Goes by 200s. And I think I want this by 50s in between those. So my minor lines, to have 50s in between that, if I put 3, then I've got 0, and this one was going to be 50, 100, 150, 200. So that'll be useful when somebody's looking at this graph. I'm going to change the colors so we can easily see them. And now it's starting to look like a good graph. Scroll down, and I notice that there's definitely a pattern here, and I want to see if there is a trend line, a trend to the data. We also call this the best fit line. So I'm going to try linear as the best fit line, and we'll see what happens. So I clicked on linear, and yeah, the linear line makes a nice line through all the data points, and we can use that line to maybe predict, like if we had 800 grams of sand, how much stretch is there going to be? It'll stretch like 29 centimeters. So that's pretty useful. That's a nice line. You can try exponential just to see what it looks like. It's not as a nice fitting line, so I probably wouldn't choose that one. Sometimes that line will work, sometimes it doesn't. What we're talking about here is a pattern between the x and y variable. So it looks like the linear pattern is the best. Polynomial looks like it fits too, but you got to be careful with that, because if you change the scale here, you will probably notice that the line curves way, 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 way out here. So I'm going to keep it with linear. And now I'm going to insert my graph, and here I have it in my chart, all from this data here, and this is what it looks like. And so now we can analyze this and make some conclusions. And also want to be able to copy the chart and place it in your document that you're working on to explain the relationship between weight and stretch of rubber band in this case. So hopefully that's helpful. Watch this as you need. We're going to be doing this a lot this year, and so it's really important for you to be able to do this. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.